What if the greatest feeling of home has nothing to do with an address? Most people spend their lives searching for a place where they can finally exhale. A place where nothing has to be earned, nothing has to be explained, and nothing has to be hidden. But sometimes that place isn't built with walls. It's built with one person. Someone whose presence quiets the noise you've carried for years. Not because they rescue you, not because they make life perfect, but because for reasons you can't quite explain, your heart stops wandering when they're near. The remarkable thing is that relationships like this rarely begin with grand gestures. They are built through ordinary moments that slowly become unforgettable. A familiar voice at the end of a long day. A silence that feels comforting instead of awkward. A feeling that, no matter how chaotic the world becomes, you've found somewhere your heart can finally rest. Perhaps that's what home has always meant. Not a location, but a feeling of being completely accepted without having to become someone else first. Psychologists often describe this as emotional safety, one of the deepest human needs. When the brain consistently experiences patience instead of judgment, understanding instead of criticism, and warmth instead of uncertainty, it gradually stops preparing for disappointment. Instead, it begins expecting peace. That's why the strongest relationships don't always feel the most dramatic. They feel the most natural. They become the place where your mind grows quieter, your shoulders feel lighter, and your heart no longer wonders if it truly belongs. Today, we'll explore 5 beautiful qualities that transform a relationship into something far greater than romance. They transform it into the rarest feeling of all. A place that finally feels like home. The first thing that makes a relationship feel like home is surprisingly simple. You stop auditioning for a place in someone's heart. At the beginning of most relationships, people naturally wear their best version. They choose the right words, hide their insecurities, smile even when they're tired. Not because they're pretending, but because they're afraid that showing too much might make them less lovable. Then something beautiful begins to change. You no longer feel the need to be impressive every moment. You laugh a little louder. You admit when you're struggling. You let them see the parts of yourself that rarely meet the outside world. And instead of feeling judged, you feel understood. That's the quiet power of emotional safety. Psychologists explain that when we consistently feel accepted, the brain stops operating in self-protection mode. It no longer asks, "Am I enough?" Instead, it begins asking, "Can I simply be myself?" That shift changes everything, because the strongest relationships aren't built on perfect versions of two people. They're built on two people who no longer feel afraid of being imperfect. Perhaps that's why home feels so comforting. Home doesn't expect a performance. It welcomes you exactly as you are. And when a relationship offers that same feeling, your heart finally stops trying to earn its place. It simply belongs. And once two people feel that kind of freedom with each other, another quiet transformation begins, one that brings a deep sense of peace into even the busiest days. The second thing that makes a relationship feel like home is something you don't notice right away. You feel it before you ever understand it. There comes a moment when their presence begins changing the atmosphere inside you. Not because they always know the perfect thing to say, but because they no longer have to. A difficult day doesn't disappear, yet somehow it doesn't feel as heavy once they're beside you. The noise in your mind grows quieter. Your breathing feels easier. The pressure you've been carrying loses its grip, even if only for a little while. That's because real comfort isn't always spoken. Sometimes it's simply shared. Psychologists explain that when we build a secure emotional bond, our nervous system starts recognizing one person as a signal of safety. Their presence gently tells the brain, "You don't have to stay on guard anymore." And that quiet message changes more than your mood. It changes how you move through life. You stop searching for constant reassurance, because simply knowing they're there becomes reassuring enough. Perhaps that's why the right relationship doesn't always fill your life with excitement. It fills it with steadiness, the kind of peace that doesn't demand attention, yet quietly makes every ordinary day feel easier to carry. And maybe that's what home has always been. Not a place where life becomes perfect, but a place where your heart finally learns how to rest. And once someone's presence begins bringing that kind of quiet peace, the relationship starts transforming even the smallest moments of everyday life into something you'll never want to forget. The third thing that makes a relationship feel like home is something no grand romance can replace. The ordinary stops feeling ordinary. At first, people believe happiness lives inside big moments, a special trip, a surprise gift, a perfect celebration. But when love grows into something real, the moments you treasure most become the ones no one else would notice. A slow walk with nowhere to be, choosing groceries while laughing over something completely unimportant, a late-night conversation that wanders from serious thoughts to meaningless jokes. The same familiar routines, yet somehow they never feel repetitive, they feel comforting. That's because the magic is no longer in what you're doing, it's in who you're doing it with. Psychologists explain that the brain attaches emotional meaning to repeated positive experiences. Over time, the simplest routines become powerful emotional memories because they're shared with someone who makes you feel safe. That's why years later, people often remember the quiet evenings more vividly than the expensive adventures. Those small moments become the heartbeat of the relationship. They quietly remind you that happiness doesn't always arrive with excitement. Sometimes, it arrives wearing the clothes of an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Perhaps that's the hidden beauty of feeling at home with someone. You stop waiting for extraordinary days to feel alive, because even the simplest moments begin carrying a warmth that money, distance, or time could never create. And when two people discover joy in the ordinary, the relationship begins changing something even deeper than happiness. It begins protecting the invisible world each heart carries within. The fourth thing that makes a relationship feel like home is invisible, yet it can be felt in almost every interaction. You begin protecting each other's inner world, not because anyone asked you to, but because their heart starts feeling precious in your hands. You become more thoughtful with your words, not out of fear, but out of care. You notice when they're emotionally tired, even if they insist they're fine. You learn when they need advice and when they simply need someone to listen. You respect the quiet boundaries that make them feel safe, and without keeping score, you find yourself offering comfort before it's ever requested. This is where love becomes more than affection. It becomes responsibility, not the heavy kind that feels like a burden, but the gentle kind that says, "Your peace matters to me." Psychologists explain that lasting relationships are strengthened by emotional responsiveness. When two people consistently respond to each other's feelings with kindness, patience, and understanding, the brain begins to associate the relationship with safety rather than uncertainty. That's why the deepest love isn't always the loudest. Often, it's found in the smallest choices, the softer reply, the extra moment of patience, the decision to protect someone's heart even when they aren't watching. Perhaps that's what makes a relationship feel like home. You no longer walk through each other's lives carelessly. You walk through them gently, because you know every heart carries invisible rooms, and you've been trusted with the key. And once two people begin protecting each other's inner world with that kind of quiet devotion, the final quality reveals why some relationships never stop feeling like home, no matter how much time passes. The fifth thing that makes a relationship feel like home isn't found in today. It's hidden inside the way you begin seeing tomorrow. Before the right person comes along, the future can feel like an unanswered question, full of uncertainty, full of what-ifs. But when a relationship becomes a true emotional home, something quietly changes. The future no longer feels like a place you have to face alone. You begin looking forward to ordinary years, not just extraordinary moments. Simple weekends become something to anticipate. Small traditions begin forming before you even notice them. Making plans feels effortless because somewhere deep inside, you've stopped wondering if they'll still be there. You simply expect their presence, not out of certainty about life, but out of trust in the connection you built together. Psychologists explain that a secure emotional bond gives the brain something incredibly powerful: predictable safety. When someone consistently brings comfort, honesty, and reliability into your life, your mind stops preparing for constant loss. Instead, it begins imagining a future with confidence rather than fear. Perhaps that's why the strongest relationships don't promise a perfect tomorrow. They make tomorrow feel less frightening. Not because every challenge disappears, but because facing life together feels easier than facing it apart. And maybe that's the deepest meaning of home. It's not a place where storms never come. It's a place where, no matter what tomorrow brings, you know you won't have to stand in the rain alone. When someone gives your heart that kind of quiet certainty, you found something far greater than romance. You found a love that doesn't just brighten your future, it gives you the courage to walk toward it. In the end, perhaps we've misunderstood what home truly means. Home was never just a place you return to. It's a feeling that quietly changes the way your heart exists. It isn't built from bricks or measured by an address. It's built from trust that never has to be questioned, acceptance that asks nothing in return, and countless ordinary moments that gently whisper, "You don't have to carry life alone anymore." That's why the deepest relationships rarely feel dramatic. They feel peaceful. They become the one place where your heart no longer feels the need to defend itself. So, if you've stopped trying to be perfect, if their presence brings a calm that words can't explain, if ordinary days have become your favorite memories, if you naturally protect each other's hearts with kindness, and if tomorrow feels brighter simply because you'll face it together, then you've found something truly rare. Not just a relationship, but a place where your soul feels understood. Because the greatest love stories aren't remembered for how loudly they began, they're remembered for how quietly they became home. A home where two imperfect people don't complete each other. They simply give each other a place to breathe, to grow, and to belong. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these qualities made you think of someone special? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy discovering the hidden psychology behind love, emotional connection, and lasting relationships, subscribe and join us for more conversations that reveal the quiet truths of the human heart.